Hey, what is up, lovelies? It is Lynn the Gacha Goblin, and the time has finally come for me to react to Xavier's, basically his identity fragmented through loss and guilt. So this is, of course, Cybermass's video. I am genuinely so late to this. My life has been a little bit crazy the past 2 weeks, and this is the only time that I have time to like really dive into this. So it's Xavier's and Raphael's that we're going to be reacting to. I am going to react to first Xavier's. This is going to be a first video, and then I will upload Raphael's video next. So let's dive into Xavier's. Sorry to everybody who's been waiting for me to react to this. I know. This is finally the time that I have to do this. So I am going to hop off screen and we're going to react to this video. Again, I am going to be pausing, reacting, and all those shenanigans. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and let's dive into who Xavier is. If I could click.
Look at a star, you're not seeing it as it is now, you're seeing it as it was. That light may have taken thousands, even millions of years to reach us.
Okay, stop. We're already diving into like symbolism here, and I'm getting sentimental. Okay, here we go. Sorry. It's just... Maz just knows how to get me so good.
Looking at a star is like looking back in time. Xavier is the same. What we see of him isn't false, but it isn't present either. He's not just a man, he's the afterimage of a boy who once believed he could save the girl he loved and failed.
Oh my god.
A life defined by promises, by losses, by timelines that never let him stay whole. Xavier's trauma fractures his identity across time. He shifts roles constantly: prince, backtracker, policeman, hunter. But underneath every one of those roles is the same wound, survivor's guilt and moral injury that broke something inside him.
I didn't even think about his survivor's guilt. Oh, wow. Okay, that makes so much sense because in the timeline that, you know, Xavier and MC meet for the first time, and she tells him that she is afflicted with like this very rare disease where she's gonna die, even though they live in a world where nobody really dies anymore, and everybody lives very, very long lives like he does. I can understand why he feels like it's survivor's guilt. That is so sad. Okay. Yeah, okay, continuing on.
Through identity theory and trauma psychology...
not anything, but I'm just gonna speed this up because this video is quite long. And I can't record for that long. Okay.
We'll explore how that fragmentation unfolds, and how MC's presence, her relentless choice to see him, name him, and love him, becomes the one thread that ties him back together.
I love this card, by the way. This card is so good. It's so good.
To understand Xavier, you need to look at who he was in the future past. There are two
in the future past? Who he was in, okay.
Memories we need to look at. The anecdote when shooting stars fall, and his myth, shooting stars. The earliest version of Xavier we meet is in the anecdote when shooting stars fall. It's the year 217 on Philos. A girl is sitting in a classroom looking at a boy she has a crush on. The girl is MC and she's dying. She has protocol syndrome and there's no known cure. She's already accepted it and she's not fighting it anymore, just watching the clock, trying to find meaningful things to do before her time runs out. And then there's Xavier, the transfer student who carries a sword on his back and is surrounded by bodyguards and is a total mystery.
You know, that is so sad. You know, that whole concept of knowing that you're slowly dying is so sad. I mean, technically everybody is slowly dying, but in MC's case, that is very genuinely sad. Yeah.
And MC notices him, not because he talks to her, in fact he doesn't beyond simple thank yous and excuse me's. She notices him because he looks lonely, because there's something behind his eyes that feels familiar to her. And that's what makes this moment important. MC isn't just looking at Xavier, she's seeing him, really seeing him, even before she understands why. MC decides that she wants to ask Xavier to see a once-in-a-century meteor shower with her, knowing it will be her only chance to see it before she dies. And here's where things shift. One day, outside the academy gates, she sees him getting pulled back into that guarded, heavily controlled life. He's about to disappear into it, so she does something impulsive. She calls out Xavier and makes up an excuse for him to leave that life momentarily, and grabs his hand and starts running away with him. It's the first time she's ever said his name aloud, and that detail matters, not just emotionally but thematically, because Xavier is a character whose entire arc is defined by identity, how it forms, how it fractures, how it gets taken away from you and reshaped by others. And at this moment, his name is not attached to a title, a duty, or a role. It's called out by someone who sees him not as a function, but as a person.
Oh my god. That is so cute. I love that. Guys, when I'm listening to Maz talk about this kind of stuff, I tear up. I just automatically tear up. But that is so true. But she's right. How do you even think about these things? Because Xavier he has worn many hats through his lifetime, watching over MC, seeing if she's safe, getting close to MC again, even after she has died and reincarnated again and again. He has just always been there, slowly just being there for her, which is so sweet. Oh man. Oh, my heart. Okay, continuing on.
For maybe the first time in his life, he chooses something for himself. He's not a prince, he's not a protector, he's just a boy following someone who saw him when no one else did. This is the foundation for everything that comes after, the start of who Xavier really is beneath all the roles he'll eventually take on. MC gives him that. Not just a crush or a moment of kindness, but a sense of self. She names him, she gives him space to be human, and this is repeated throughout many of Xavier's memories. This is why Xavier falls in love with her. Later in the anecdote, we see them grow closer and he eventually finds out that she's dying.
You know what? This is actually now that I think about it, this is actually a very common theme in like romances where the royalty person doesn't really feel like they're their own person. They feel like more of like a construct of society, like this figurehead, whereas like a commoner or a normal person kind of just treats them like a person, and that's why the royalty loves that person. It's a common trope that I've seen many times over in different like books and movies and whatever, and it's interesting that I haven't connected the dots in Love and Deepspace, because I think since we know Xavier so well as the MC in the story, you never really remember that he is a prince. For me, I've never really treated Xavier as a prince or seen him as a prince, because I feel like that's very secondary to who his nature really is. Like the Xavier I know is the guy who is really bad at cooking, the one who likes to fall asleep a lot, who's tired a lot, but who is very badass in fighting and all that stuff. Like, that's who I see Xavier as. I never really thought of him as the princely type, which I think is the first and foremost role that he played in his entire life. So it's interesting to see that that is how MC got him to love her. Not only with royalty tropes, but there's also in like fame tropes, or whenever somebody is put up onto a pedestal, if there's somebody else who doesn't really see them like that and treats them like a normal person, they usually end up falling in love in stories. So interesting.
He decides at that moment to see the meteor shower with her. They meet at Skymer Assault Flat, and together they watch the stars as they fall in the sky. She gives him a little handmade tassel shaped like a star, and from that day forward, he never takes it off his sword. Not in that life, not in any life after. She's taken aback when he asks to hug her, and it's a beautiful moment, making MC wonder what price she will pay for being so selfish. But she realizes this was Xavier possibly saying goodbye, because after that night, she didn't see him again for an entire month. During that time, MC ends up in the hospital, her condition getting worse. Her thoughts are consumed with Xavier, hoping he'll return, but each day that goes by, her hope fades. Until one night, when she's close to the end of her life, she sneaks out of the hospital and back to the place they made that promise. And there she sees him, running towards her. He's holding a protocol that will save her life, but he's arrived too late. MC sees that he also has a collar around his neck and is visibly upset by this, asking if he traded his freedom for her. We now know what Xavier sacrificed in order to save her. It's an evil suppressor, meaning Xavier cannot use his evil to his full potential. And finally, Xavier holds her and watches her as she dies in his arms. He makes her a promise, he'll find her again. But that promise isn't just about love, it's about atonement. Because the moment MC dies in his arms, something inside Xavier is permanently altered. Not only does he arrive too late with the protocore in hand, but the collar around his neck tells us what it cost him to even try. An evil suppressor, a shackle, a sacrifice of his freedom in exchange for a miracle he couldn't deliver in time.
My God, you know, when you put it that way, it makes my heart tear into two. Jeez Louise. That whole, like, hasn't anybody ever thought that was kind of crazy? Like, yeah, Xavier and MC knew each other in school and whatever, but like, the time they actually hang out was the time that he fell in love with her immediately, and he was like, I need to find a way to prolong her life now, which is crazy. I feel like that is just like super above and beyond in fictional love, but it is very, very sweet. So sad that he was so late though. Oh man. Just like by a few moments, you know? Anyway.
And that is the root of it. He gave up everything, and he still failed. This is the emotional core of Xavier's survivor's guilt. The belief that he should have done more, that he could have, that he didn't deserve to survive if she didn't. Survivor's guilt isn't just about living when someone else doesn't. It's about believing that your continued existence came at their expense. But there's something deeper here, something even more destructive. It's moral injury. Moral injury is a psychological wound that occurs when someone is forced to act in a way that goes against their deeply held values, or when they witness betrayal by systems or people they once trusted. Unlike PTSD, which is rooted in fear and threat, moral injury is rooted in guilt, shame, and the feeling of having compromised your own ethics. Because Xavier didn't just lose MC, he had to bargain with a system he already knew was broken. The collar has Evergroup's logo on it, suggesting Xavier made a deal with them in order to get the protocol that would save MC's life. Xavier had to offer up his own autonomy in exchange for the hope of saving her. This is where Xavier's fracture becomes permanent, not just because he lost her, but because he compromised his own ethics to try and save her. He crossed a line he never wanted to cross, and it didn't work. That is moral injury in its purest form, the unbearable weight of having betrayed your own values even for the right reasons. From that moment,
That is crazy. Yeah, because if you think about it, Xavier is the epitome of a white knight, right? And probably he already knew back then that that Ever was a bad company or a bad organization or whatever. And he had to basically strike a deal with the devil in order to try and save the one that he loves, but failed ultimately. Wow. That is so sad. That is crazy. But if he knows that Ever was bad then he knows now that Ever is bad too, right? Huh. Interesting. Well, this is why we need more storytelling in the main story, because I want to dive deeper into MC sharing everything that she knows about Ever to Xavier, to Zane, to all of these different characters, right? And see how they react based on their own history with Ever themselves. Because clearly we have this really deep connection between Xavier and Ever because of the past. And if we learn, MC has no idea right now, like, who Xavier really is, his past and all these things. She has an idea, but she doesn't really know. And I feel like if Xavier was willing to explain everything, she would be completely mind blown.
moment on, Xavier is not simply grieving MC, he's grieving himself. The self he was when she called out his name. The self who believed he could make a different choice. The boy who dared to want something. He keeps the tassel and carries it as a memory, and he repeats the same promise across time. Not because he believes he can fix what happened, but because that promise is the only part of himself he still recognizes. This is where identity theory comes in. Now, according to Erik Erikson and James Marcia, a stable identity forms through exploration and commitment, but trauma disrupts that process. Xavier never gets a chance to consolidate a self. He begins to fragment. He becomes defined not by who he is, but by the roles he's forced to inhabit. Function replaces identity, and memory replaces presence. Now, a perfect mirror to this first life comes much later on in his story, in the memory Floral Blessing. MC and Xavier are now dating in the present timeline, and they unknowingly recreate many of these original moments. The present is echoing the past. Take a look.
Throughout history, humanity has always made the same wishes. Perhaps it's because those feelings we have are timeless. What will you wish for? What is it? Or does making a wish require you to stare at me?
MC grabs Xavier's hand and runs with him, just like she did outside the academy gates on Philos. There's a moment where he holds the umbrella to shield her from prying eyes, just like in the anecdote. And one of the most striking moments, especially for me as I was rewatching this, I realised that they both clasp their hands together and make a wish, just like they did in the anecdote. Here is that excerpt. Xavier and I look up at the same time. The dark inky sky is illuminated by various colours. Clusters of stars light up the sky one after the other, appearing and disappearing. It's as if only Xavier and I exist in this world, and only the two of us see this meteor shower. I clasp my hands and make a wish. When I open my eyes, I see Xavier is also doing the same thing. I ask what he wished for, but he shakes his head and says he can't tell me. Floral Blessing feels like a second chance at their first story.
Oh, stop.
The same atmosphere.
Stop. Oh, that makes me want to cry. Because when I watched Floral Blessing for the first time, I saw parallels to Xavier's story also, but I didn't remember this anecdote. Man. I love it when writers basically take things from the past and like redo it in a certain way, especially when there's like time travel involved and all these things. It just plays out perfectly, you know. MC repeats the same thing that she did before, and Xavier is probably looking at that and like his heart swells and like he probably realizes and has that feeling of deja vu, you know. Oh man. Okay, continuing on.
The same symbols, but this time it doesn't end in tragedy. This time, MC stays. It ends the way it always should have, with a kiss, and even more importantly, with her seeing him the way he's always longed to be seen, as just Xavier, the man she chooses. But that's the present timeline. For now, we remain in the past, or rather the future past, and that leads us to the myth, Shooting Stars. When Xavier meets MC again in Shooting Stars, she doesn't remember him. Not the salt flat, not the meteor shower, not the promise they made. She's now a Moonchaser Knight training alongside him, and Xavier still carries the tassel she gave him, an object heavy with memory that she no longer shares. And she asks about it casually throughout the myth, unaware it's a relic of a life she once changed. To the Academy, Xavier is a star hunter who never misses. To Philos, he is their future king. To MC, he's a question, someone she instinctively trusts but doesn't fully understand why. But to himself, Xavier is beginning to disappear. What we witness in Shooting Stars is a deepening of the identity fracture that began at the Salt Flat. In this life, the breaking point is the Gladius ceremony. What should have been a rite of passage becomes a moral crucible. Xavier disappears into the forest for 7 days, promising MC he'll return. When he finally comes back, he says nothing, he just holds her. He doesn't tell her what he saw, but we learn that it shattered him. Philos, the supposed beacon of eternity, is powered by death. Human lives feed into its core, sacrifice for the illusion of peace. And worse, his family knew. The royal bloodline, the legacy he was raised to protect, has always depended on systemic harm. And now they expect him to carry on that cycle. Xavier refuses, and this is where his moral injury deepens. Xavier isn't just disillusioned by what he learns in the Gladius ceremony, he's ethically undone. The legacy he was born into demands complicity in its systemic harm. But now, in this life, it's her again, branded as Philos' solution. She's an immortal body who can be offered endlessly. The one person who should have lived freely is being turned into the cost of everyone else's survival. And Xavier breaks, and he vanishes again. But this time, it's not out of fear, it's out of resistance. His grief becomes defiance. His guilt sharpens into purpose, and just like on Philos when he disappeared for a month to find a cure, leaving MC to hope and wait and fade, he leaves again, still trying to atone for the moment in their last life where he couldn't save her. Maybe this time he can. When he returns, he's no longer a prince, no longer a light seeker. He's something new, the leader of the Backtrackers, a rogue unit made of fractured knights, fractured truth, fractured timelines, and their mission is to undo the future that everyone else is too afraid to face. In this myth, we don't just see Xavier unravel, we see him rebuild, but not as himself, as something functional. He's strategic and detached. He isn't backtracking to save the world, he's doing it to save her from it. And once again, Xavier finds himself suspended between who he was, who he is, and who he's allowed to be.
You know, out of all of these things, the most frustrating thing, I think, is the fact that Xavier doesn't tell MC anything. He just kind of disappears and doesn't talk to MC about it. And I don't know, this has always been something that I've felt in different stories too, where I feel like confusion and disappointment and sadness could have been easily avoided if communication was properly, used in these relationships. I can understand Xavier's hesitance to communicate this with MC because it would probably scare MC to find out that she's been reincarnating so many times. But I do think that it is still important to tell her, because MC is badass. She could take care of herself. She could do that, right? That's just my point of view. I think that is my point of view if I was the one in MC's shoes. But because MC is her own character, I can understand why Xavier is hesitant to tell her anything. Especially in like the present timeline where she is a little bit too gung-ho. I think Xavier is scared that she might do something reckless and that he would lose her again. So that is my opinion.
By the time we see Xavier in the present timeline, he is no longer the boy who watched the stars fall beside a dying girl. He's not the prince who refused to carry on a legacy built on sacrifice. He's not even the backtracker who tried to rewrite a future that kept breaking him. In the anecdote passing by, we're in the early 2030s on Earth. Xavier works as a police officer, a role grounded in justice, but also heavy with penance. It's hard not to read it as atonement. He saves strangers now, maybe hoping it will make up for the ones he couldn't, mainly MC. For once there's no throne, no time travel, no world to save, just small choices, just quiet good. He doesn't ask for recognition, and in fact he avoids it. Xavier is defined not just by his silence, but by dislocation. He doesn't fully belong in this world, not to this time, not even to this version of himself. He walks through life almost like a ghost. He's not unseen, but he's unrooted. This is what identity fragmentation looks like after the collapse. It's not chaos, it's detachment. A man who keeps erasing himself to protect the people around him. By now his moral injury isn't just a wound, it's a rhythm. He keeps helping, keeps protecting, keeps giving others the second chances he believes he's forfeited for himself. He doesn't believe he deserves forgiveness, so he never asks for it. He simply acts, and suffers quietly. When we meet him again in the main storyline, he's taken on yet another mask, a hunter in the Hunters Association. But this time, there's a shadow trailing close behind, Lumiere. The name of the man who saved MC during the Chrono Rift catastrophe in 2034. We see the tension between Xavier's public image and his private self almost immediately. In the Bond story Night of Warmth, MC shares an impression, something that's been lingering quietly in her mind. Let's take a look at that.
Xavier, you're different from what I had imagined.
Different how?
Well, I can't think of anything in particular.
What did you think I was like at first, then?
A monster with a strong evil, who kills every wanderer he sees, and you can never find him unless something bad happens.
None of that sounds very good.
Really? I was just saying you're talented and trustworthy. And distant at times. You're like a star in the night sky. So close, yet so far. A star that's out of reach.
A distant star. Stars are much farther away from the Earth compared to the Moon. Humans rarely visit them. That must mean they're very lonely.
What if one day we bring home a star together?
How would we do that? It would be easier for a star to land on Earth and stay by your side.
MC is beginning to realize something, that Xavier is not just a man with a sword and an evil. He's something more. And Xavier doesn't argue because he's used to being misunderstood. He knows what it means to be reduced to what you can do, rather than who you are. This tension between what people believe he is and who he actually is becomes the emotional spine of the myth Twilight Dawn. There, Xavier plays Lumiere in a film about his past, standing in front of a camera, dressed as himself but not himself. And even though he's technically playing himself, it's still a performance. It always has been. The world loves Lumiere, the name, the power, the light. But Xavier himself? He isn't sure that version of himself is even real anymore. So, when he asks MC this...
Who do you like more? Me or Lumiere?
I love this memory. This is the memory that I fell in love with Xavier with, and it's so good. Anyway.
It's not a joke, and it's not something to take at face value. It's not about rivalry or jealousy. It's fear. The fear that the story will always be more lovable than the truth. At this point, Xavier has been so many things. A prince, a police officer, a light seeker, a backtracker, a hunter. Each one a version of himself that served someone else's purpose. And none of them feel whole. This is where identity theory and self-discrepancy theory start to overlap. D.W. Winnicott's concept of the false self explains what happens when someone performs the version of themselves that others want, long enough to forget who they really are. And in psychological terms, this kind of split creates lasting emotional tension. Xavier lives with that every day. Lumiere is the false self, elegant, unshakable, and adored. But the real Xavier, he's unsure if he's enough without that light. That's why her teasing, her affection, and especially her honesty matter so much. In the same memory, after teasing him for sulking over Lumiere, MC doesn't just reassure him, she picks him. But dummies who get jealous and sulk, those are my favourite. Just look at his reaction to MC saying this. It's genuine startled joy, because in that moment she saw past a role he assigned himself. She saw past the guilt that drove him to become Lumiere. She saw the flawed, traumatized man for who he really was. And she chose him anyway. And this means more to Xavier than anything, because Xavier isn't trying to be admired. He's trying to be known by the one woman he loves more than anything. Now let's take a quick look at the memory No Restraint.
Yeah? I just wanted to say, I'm not the kind of partner who would leave you behind. I'm also not one of those young people who takes things for granted either. Yeah, you were very loud. I know you know, but I still wanted to say it.
Although it looks like Xavier is affirming loyalty here, this is a moment of vulnerability. He's not trying to convince MC of this, he already believes she knows, but he needs to say it out loud anyway. This is key. It tells us that he's deeply aware of how others might perceive him as distant, inscrutable, unreliable, and even cold. He's trying to affirm an emotional truth about himself aloud, not to persuade MC, but almost to reassure himself that he's not that kind of man. Once again linked to his trauma of not saving MC in time. Psychologically, this moment echoes what attachment theory might call an anxious avoidant communicator. Someone who rarely expresses emotion directly, but when they do, it comes with disclaimers and gentle hesitance. It also connects to identity theory in how he's actively choosing to define himself here. Not by the roles others assign him, but by the kind of partner he wants to be. He's carving out a small space for real identity. Saying it out loud, even if it seems unnecessary, is his way of anchoring himself in something real. Something that isn't wrapped in myth, sacrifice, or obligation. Now, fast forward to the moment when this happens.
If I still haven't felt it, does this mean I'm a lost cause?
This card is crazy. Okay. He likes it when she says his name.
Since that's the case, tonight will be the last time.
It's not just about her voice whispering Xavier, it's the context of that moment. This is when his composure breaks. This moment demonstrates the buildup of emotional repression meeting sudden emotional intimacy. People who have held everything in, who are used to being in control at all times, often experience vulnerability like a dam breaking. Xavier has been waiting an unbelievably long time to be alone with MC like this.
Probably many, many, many years.
And for her to affirm that she sees him just by whispering his name, that moment is the dam cracking. The whispered Xavier moment is the flood. Her saying his name like that tells him she sees me. And in that split second, the composed hunter, the man of restraint, the self-denying prince, all fall away.
You know what? Maz has this what a screen to pause on. Maz has this amazing way of basically taking the spiciest scenes in Love and Deepspace and explaining them to where they make sense to each character and why they make sense. That is so fun. That is so entertaining. That is such a talent.
For years, he's had to be the strategist, the backtracker, the careful one. He's had to bury anger, hunger, longing, anything that could make him reckless. But MC changes that. She brings out the man he tries to keep buried. Just him. And that unraveling continues, not just in moments of their physical closeness, but in emotional aftermaths that follow, like in Misty Silhouette. This is a moment where they're laying together after sleeping together.
See what I'm talking about? She takes the spiciest cards, makes them so wholesome.
And she asks him the one question he's never been able to answer truthfully. Take a look.
You won't? Do you think I'm a little childish? But I can't help it. As long as I'm like you, that's enough. Childish, brave, and loved. I want to be just like you.
What follows is not just reassurance, it's identity building. MC doesn't just tell him she loves him, she names him, she anchors him to this world. In identity theory, recognition from a loved one helps affirm and stabilize the self. MC isn't just comforting him, she's naming him into existence, just like she did in their first meeting on Philos in 217.
I freaking love the story of each of these characters. Damn it, they're all making me tear up.
Just like she did in No Restraint. Naming someone repeatedly in moments of intimacy, as MC does, acts like a mirror, reflecting identity back to the self. Social psychologists like George Herbert Mead suggest that identity is built dialogically. We learn who we are by how others see and name us. MC's repetition isn't just romantic, it's rehabilitative. And for someone who's lived fragmented across timelines, constantly shape-shifting for survival, that affirmation is a form of healing. It grounds him. And when he responds with this...
As long as I'm like you, that's enough. Childish, brave, and loved. I want to be just like you.
It's one of the few times Xavier expresses desire, not just for love, but for a sense of self. He doesn't want to be a myth or a hero. He wants to be someone like her, someone who feels deeply, who loves openly, who knows who they are. That moment is so revealing, because it tells us exactly what Xavier has always longed for. To be loved not as an idea, not as a symbol, but just as a person. And MC, in naming him 3 times, gives him that gift. So why does Xavier get so jealous when MC speaks to anyone else? Sometimes it's an associate, other times it's a neighbour, and one time it was even a little boy. It's simple. Xavier's fear goes into overdrive. That fear is that he might be easy to forget, that he might be being erased from this timeline because MC's eyes are not on him. It's not just about romantic rivalry. Xavier is a man scattered across centuries. Timelines, roles, and missions that erase more of him than they preserve. For someone like him, love is terrifying. Not because it's fragile, but because he is. Because when someone finally sees him, truly sees him, it means there's something to lose, something that really matters. And with MC, that fear runs deeper than with anyone else. Check out the phone call Broken Street Lamp.
I don't...
Oh. This was such a cute phone call, too. Oh, man.
Just for that? Sorry, I can't. But if you really want to talk to him, you can still talk in the dark. I didn't know you needed 20 minutes to say the word goodbye. There's nothing strange about what I said. I'm tired. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Look up. Don't give it weird names. Go home. I'll keep an eye on you from the balcony.
Xavier's jealousy in this moment isn't dramatic or explosive, it's passive-aggressive and masked under tiredness and sarcasm. When he says, "I didn't know you needed 20 minutes to say the word goodbye," what he's really expressing is discomfort. Insecure attachment styles, particularly avoidant preoccupied types, often show jealousy not by confronting it, but by withdrawing or making indirect jabs. Exactly what Xavier does here. He doesn't demand MC's attention outright. He doesn't forbid her from talking to someone else. But he does make it clear that it bothers him, even while pretending it doesn't.
You know what I love about all the characters? They have all of their strong attributes. They have all of their perfect, dream guy kind of attributes. But they also have their flaws. And their flaws make them so human. And I feel like it really, really works out so well for all of the characters. It's like, right now, Xavier having his jealousy side because he's fearful of losing the MC is just so perfect. It's so perfect to his story, to his character, and having it explained like this, it helps so much.
That internal conflict, which is wanting her all to himself, but feeling like he can't ask for that, is so central to his character. That's why her clarification matters so much. The moment she explains herself, he softens, his tone shifts, and he stays on the call. It's not control he's after, it's reassurance. We see this conflict play out in Shooting Stars too, when Jeremiah casually puts his arm around MC. It's a brief friendly gesture, but when Xavier returns to the scene almost immediately, as if he was quietly watching MC, there's a sudden tension in the air. MC even comments on how quickly he came back. He doesn't say a word about what he saw, but he removes Jeremiah's arm and drags MC away. In that moment, Xavier isn't just reacting to touch. He's reacting to a threat, not to her safety, but to his place in her life. Jeremiah is someone warm, open, and emotionally accessible. He's someone Xavier could easily believe MC might choose, and perhaps even should choose, because he isn't haunted by loss, fractured by timelines, or drowning in guilt. And Xavier's immediate response is pulling her away, because to him that closeness, even if it's innocent, reopens the wound of having lost her once already. It signals the possibility of being replaced, of being forgotten, of becoming invisible again in a life he's already had to watch slip away. He's already lost her once.
Wow.
Survivor's guilt doesn't just haunt people with regret, it distorts their sense of worthiness. For Xavier, saving her once wasn't enough. Failing to save her became part of his internal identity. A man who didn't make it in time. So now every moment he thinks she's slipping away, even if it's just a 20-minute walk home, reopens that wound. So when he sees her, growing close to someone else, even in the most innocent ways, it hits that old wound. He doesn't believe he's entitled to her attention, but he wants it more than anything. It all comes back to his struggle with believing that a man who let her die before deserves her now. Now, in saying all of this, as I've mentioned earlier, there are moments of healing for Xavier, and we actually see this in his branch in the main story. Up until this point, Xavier has borne everything in silence. His grief, his guilt, his fear of failing again. He's always been the protector, the one who disappears when things get too close, the one who holds the weight so no one else has to. But in this part of the story, we're starting to see something change in him. We're back in Starfall Forest, and even though it's a simulation, Xavier is re-traumatized. The place where his sense of self once shattered becomes the setting for emotional exposure. It pulls at old wounds, and it brings them to the surface. But this time he isn't alone. MC is there, and more importantly, she doesn't just witness his pain, she meets it. Not with pity, not with fear, but with her own strength, with a love that doesn't flinch. And that's a massive turning point for Xavier. Because for him, trauma has always meant isolation. He failed her once, he couldn't protect her. And so he learned only to rely on himself, to carry the guilt, the burden, the memory without ever asking for help. Letting someone in felt too dangerous, too close to repeating the same loss. But now, MC reaches into the center of that fear and stays with him.
He also, because he has to rely on himself, he can never truly explain everything to MC. because it was his fault that she's going through this reincarnation process. That's what he believes. Oh, wow. Right? That's so deep, guys. What the actual heck? You know, when I was younger, I thought I could write stories, but like when I experience something like this, it's like, who do you think you are to think that you could write characters this deep? Oh, wow. Okay, continuing on.
From a psychological standpoint, this is where we start to see a reversal in his internal narrative. Where he once believed that being close to her meant putting her at risk, now he begins to see the inverse, that being close to her might be the thing that saves him. The presence he once tried to protect from danger becomes the presence that protects him from himself. This shift doesn't erase the past, it doesn't undo the guilt or the trauma, but it does open the door to healing. He begins to talk more, trust more, and let her really see him, not as this flawless protector, but as a man who has been lost for a very long time. And in doing so, Xavier does something he's never truly allowed himself to do before. He starts to hope. He hopes that he can be forgiven. He hopes that he can still be loved. And in that hope, something begins to heal. Not all at once, but enough to matter. Because for the first time, Xavier isn't just surviving out of guilt or duty. He's beginning to imagine a future shaped not by the role he was given, but by the person he's finally allowed to become. One where identity is no longer a mask, but a choice. The guilt will never vanish completely, but in her presence, it no longer has to be the loudest voice in the room.
Wow. Beautiful, as always. Beautiful as always. That was a fantastic mess. Damn, I really love watching all of your stuff. It is so good. Ooh, you really need to sit down and like take it all in. It's like almost watching a serious documentary movie. It's so good. The analysis of all of these characters make me appreciate them so much more than just their lore, because I mean, okay, for me, I'll read through all of the story, I'll read through the lore, I'll read through the anecdotes and experience the characters, but a lot of these things, you know, they fly past me. Like I'll understand that Xavier is this like really sad character, he has this sad past with MC and all of these things, but connecting it to how it shaped his personality, how it formed who he is now and how he identifies himself, and why he loves MC so much is something that's completely out of my scope of capabilities, really. So it is so nice to have somebody like Maz in the community really talking about these characters, explaining who they are, explaining their traumas, and giving them more personality, more life. So that was wonderful. That was very beautiful. Thank you so much, Maz. Oh, okay. Well, if you haven't subscribed already to Maz, please go check her channel out. She deserves all the love and support. And yeah, if you like my video covering her video, leave a like down below. And that's pretty much it. If you want to subscribe to my channel, I cover Love in Deepspace. And the next reaction I'm going to do is reacting to Raphael next. So, yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I am Lynn, the Gacha Goblin, and I will see you lovelies in the next video. Bye-bye now.